The great ship Harmony floated in the darkness of space like a metal city among the stars. Inside its massive halls, 12 different alien species gathered for their monthly meeting. They called themselves the Galactic Hegemony Council, and for over 3,000 years, they had ruled this part of the galaxy. The council chamber was enormous. Each species had their own section built to match their needs. The tall, gray-skinned sat in elevated chairs that made them look down on everyone else. The water-breathing delegates stayed in their clear tanks filled with blue liquid. The insect-like moved together like one mind, their 6 eyes always watching. At the center of the chamber stood a simple metal table with one chair. This was where the lesser species came to ask for things. Today, that chair would hold a human. Walked through the ship's corridors with steady steps. She was 42 years old, with dark hair pulled back and wearing Earth's formal diplomatic uniform. The alien guards around her were twice her size, but she showed no fear. She had been Earth's ambassador for 5 years and had made this trip many times before. But something felt different today. The guards led her past walls covered in strange writing from dozen worlds. Pictures showed the Council's great victories over the centuries. Every race that had tried to challenge them was either destroyed or made to serve. Had seen these images before, but today they seemed like warnings. Reached the chamber doors. They were massive things made from metal that could stop laser fire. When they opened, the sound echoed like thunder. Inside, hundreds of alien eyes turned to watch her walk in. The air was thick and hard to breathe, mixed to work for all the different species. She took her seat at the center table and looked up at the Prime Minister. He was 8 feet tall with skin like old stone and eyes that glowed yellow. His voice was deep and cold when he spoke. "Human," said, his words filled with disgust. "You have come again with your requests. Your species continues to demand things it has not earned." Opened her data pad and spoke clearly. "Prime Minister, I come with trade proposals that would benefit all council members. Humanity has proven its worth in mining operations and security services. We request consideration for full council membership." The chamber filled with sounds that might have been laughter from a dozen different species. The made clicking noises while the delegates sent bubbles rising in their tanks. Raised one long-fingered hand, and the room became silent. "Full membership." Yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Your species has existed in space for less than 1 human lifetime. The youngest council member has ruled star systems for longer than your entire civilization." Had heard this before, but she continued. "Humanity brings unique skills to the galaxy. Our adaptability, our problem-solving abilities, our willingness to take risks that others fear. We have served the Council well as contractors, but we seek equal partnership." Another council member spoke up. This was of the Empire, a creature that looked like a tree made of crystal. His voice sounded like breaking glass. "Humans are useful as workers and soldiers, nothing more. You fight wars for us because you enjoy violence. You mine dangerous worlds because you breed quickly and death means little to you." Felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "That is not who we are. Humanity values life deeply. We take risks to protect others and to build something better for all species." Stood up from his high chair and his shadow fell over like a dark cloud. "Humans are tools. Useful tools, but still just tools. You seem to forget your place in the natural order." The natural order stood up too, though she only reached the alien's chest. "There is no natural order that makes one species better than another. We are all thinking beings trying to survive and grow." "Silence!" His voice boomed through the chamber. "Your arrogance proves exactly why humans will never be equals. You are children playing with weapons you barely understand, flying in ships you from your betters." His hands clenched into fists. "We may be new to space, but we learn fast. Every species here was once young and struggling. You have forgotten what that was like." "We remember perfectly," said with a cold smile. We remember which species deserve to survive and which deserve to serve. Humans have shown their nature clearly. You are violent, chaotic, and short-lived. Good for dangerous work, but never for leadership. Took a deep breath. Humanity seeks peace through partnership. We offer our friendship to all council species. But friendship must be between equals, not masters and servants. Equals? Laughed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. Let me show you what equality looks like for humans. Felt something wrong in the air. The other council members were leaning forward in their seats, watching with bright interest. Some were recording what was happening. Reached into his robes and pulled out a small device. It looked like a metal flower with crystal petals that pulsed with red light. Had never seen anything like it, but every instinct told her to run. This is a neural disruptor, said casually. It attacks the nervous system of most carbon-based life. Very painful but not immediately fatal. Your species will learn to respect their betters. Backed away from the table, but there was nowhere to go. The guards had moved to block the doors. This is murder, she said. I am a diplomatic envoy under galactic law. Galactic law is what we say it is, replied. And today we say that humans need to learn their place. He pressed a button on the device. Felt fire race through her body. Every nerve screamed at once, and she fell to her knees. The pain was beyond anything she had ever imagined, like being burned from the inside while her brain was torn apart. But even as agony consumed her, managed to speak. You have made a terrible mistake. Laughed again. The only mistake was thinking humans could ever be more than servants. His last thought before the darkness took her was of her father Admiral, and her wife Dr. Sarah waiting for her to come home. They would want to know why she never returned. The council members watched die with satisfaction. They had made their point clearly. The recording of her execution would be sent to Earth as a lesson. Humans would learn to accept their place or face the same fate. As his body grew still, turned to address the council. Let this serve as an example to any other species that forgets their position. The natural order will be maintained. But had made one critical error. He assumed that killing one human would break humanity's spirit. He had no idea that it would instead unite them in a way the galaxy had never seen before. The recording device continued to run, capturing every detail of what would later be known as the greatest mistake in galactic history. The signal from the council ship reached Earth exactly 72 hours after died. The message came through the emergency diplomatic channel, marked as urgent for all human governments. When the first officials opened the file, they expected trade negotiations or treaty updates. Instead, they watched die. The recording showed everything. His brave words, his cold laughter, and the neural disruptor slowly killing Earth's ambassador while alien leaders watched like it was entertainment. The message that came with the video was simple: submit within one solar cycle, or more humans will die. Within 6 hours, the recording had reached every human settlement from Luna City to the mining colonies at the edge of human space. The reaction was immediate and unlike anything the species had ever shown before. On Earth, crowds gathered in the streets, not to riot or protest, but to stand together in complete silence. In New York, London, Beijing, and Lagos, millions of people stood without speaking, watching his face on public screens. The silence was more frightening than any scream. President of Earth called an emergency session of the global parliament. Representatives who had been arguing about trade policies and territory rights just hours before now sat together with grim faces. The usual political fighting had disappeared completely. They killed our ambassador, President said, her voice steady despite her anger. They murdered a woman under diplomatic protection to send us a message. Now we must send them one. In the Mars colonies, Governor had already begun shutting down all trade with council species. The asteroid mining stations stopped sending rare metals to alien worlds. Human mercenaries serving in Council military units received coded messages telling them to return home immediately or go into hiding. But the most important reaction came from the Luna military complex, where Admiral sat in his office staring at a picture of his daughter. Had been born on Luna Base 42 years ago, had taught her to walk in the low-gravity corridors. He had watched her grow from a curious child into one of humanity's finest diplomats. Now she was dead, killed for asking to be treated as an equal. Admiral Sarah's wife stood beside at the large window that looked out at Earth. Sarah was the head of the Research Institute, humanity's leading expert on alien life forms. For 15 years, she had worked to understand other species, hopping to build bridges between humans and aliens. "They think they know us," Sarah said quietly. 30 years of peaceful contact, and they think they understand what humans are. Nodded slowly. "Always said the Council saw us as children with guns, dangerous but not truly threatening." Sarah turned from the window, her face hard with determination. They're about to learn why that was a mistake. Within 24 hours of death, something extraordinary happened across human space. Every government, corporation, military force, and civilian group that had been competing with each other suddenly started working together. Political enemies sat at the same tables. Rival companies shared technology and resources. Military units that had never spoken before began coordinated planning. The Luna Parliament, representing all human settlements, called for an emergency vote. The motion was simple: authorization of Protocol Omega in response to the murder of Ambassador. The vote was unanimous. 300 representatives from dozens of worlds and stations all said yes. Most humans had never heard of Protocol Omega. It was classified at the highest levels, known only to senior military officers and government leaders. Even many of them had thought it was just a theoretical plan, something discussed in secret meetings but never meant to be used. Admiral called together the senior staff of every human military unit. They gathered in the war room deep inside Luna Base, a chamber that had been built 50 years ago but never used for its intended purpose. The walls were covered with star maps showing every known alien world, trade route, and military base. Protocol Omega was created 30 years ago, told the assembled officers. When humanity first made contact with the Council, some of us wondered what would happen if peaceful relations failed. We hoped we would never need it. General Harrison of the Mars Defense Force raised her hand. "Admiral, most of us don't know what Protocol Omega contains. What exactly are we authorizing?" Looked around the room at faces he had known for decades. These were the men and women who had built humanity's defenses, who had trained soldiers and designed weapons while hoping they would never be needed. Protocol Omega assumes that humanity faces extinction from a superior alien force, explained. It is not a plan for victory in a normal war. It is a plan to ensure that any species attempting to destroy humanity pays such a terrible price that no other species will ever try again. Colonel Martinez from the Europa station stood up. "Sir, the Council has 12 member species with thousands of worlds and ships that are centuries ahead of our technology. How could we possibly threaten them?" Sarah stepped forward to answer. "Because for 30 years, while they thought they were using us as servants and soldiers, we were learning everything about them. Every human trader, diplomat, scientist, and mercenary in Council space was also gathering intelligence." She activated a holographic display that showed detailed information about each Council species. Biological data, technological specifications, cultural weaknesses, military strategies, even genetic maps. "Every time went to negotiate," Sarah continued. "She carried hidden sensors that recorded alien biology. Every human miner working on Council worlds sent back geological surveys and industrial data. Every human soldier fighting in Council wars reported on alien military tactics and equipment." The room was completely silent as the officers realized what this meant. Humanity had not been serving the Council for 30 years. They had been studying them. The Council thinks humans are useful because we're violent and expendable, said. They don't understand that we're actually dangerous because we're adaptable and patient. While they saw simple servants, we were building the most complete intelligence database in galactic history. Doctor from the Titan research station asked the question everyone was thinking. What exactly does Protocol Omega do with this information? Sarah's expression became cold and determined. It identifies the specific weaknesses of each Council species and develops targeted responses to exploit those weaknesses. Biological, technological, psychological, and economic weapons designed specifically for each alien race. The goal is not conquest, added. It's deterrence through overwhelming response. Make the cost of attacking humanity so terrible that no species will ever consider us weak or expendable again. The authorization codes were entered by 5 different officers, each holding part of the key to humanity's most secret weapon. As the final code was confirmed, communication arrays across human space began sending coded messages to sleeper agents, hidden research facilities, and secret military units that most humans never knew existed. On Earth, Sarah returned to her laboratory and began preparing biological samples that had been stored in maximum security vaults for decades. On Mars, weapons factories that had been disguised as mining equipment suddenly revealed their true purpose. In the asteroid belt, hidden shipyards began building vessels from designs that had never appeared on any official records. 48 hours after his death, Admiral transmitted humanity's response to the Council. It was not a message of surrender or a plea for mercy. It was a single transmission containing a photograph of and walking together on her wedding day, and 4 simple words. Protocol Omega has begun. The Council received the message and dismissed it as meaningless human emotion. They had no idea that those 4 words meant they were now facing an enemy that had spent 30 years preparing for this exact moment. For 3 months after Protocol Omega began, the galaxy experienced something it had never known before: complete silence from human space. The Council expected desperate human fleets to attack their borders. They prepared for suicide bombers and terrorist strikes against civilian targets. Some members even thought humans might try to negotiate surrender terms. What they did not expect was nothing. Human colonies went dark. Trade ships stopped arriving at alien ports. The mercenary companies that had fought for Council members for decades simply vanished. Communication signals from Earth, Mars, Luna, and hundreds of human settlements ceased completely. It was as if 30 million humans had simply disappeared from the galaxy. Stood in his private chambers aboard the Harmony, looking out at the stars through reinforced crystal windows. He had expected the humans to react with their usual violence and chaos. Instead, there was only empty space where human ships should be traveling. Perhaps they have all killed themselves, suggested his military advisor. Humans are known for emotional responses. Maybe they chose death over submission. But was not convinced. The silence felt wrong, like the quiet before a storm. He ordered scout ships to investigate human territory and find out what had happened to Earth's people. The first scout ship, a fast cruiser called Swift Judgment, entered human space near the Luna system. The crew expected to find panicked civilians fleeing their worlds or perhaps human military ships hiding behind their planets. Instead, they found empty space stations and silent colonies. Luna Base showed no life signs. Earth's orbital platforms were dark and cold. Mars looked abandoned, with no ships moving between its cities. The scout captain sent a message back to the Council. Human space appears completely evacuated. No signs of life or activity. But as Swift Judgment prepared to leave the Sol system, it simply stopped transmitting. The last message received was, detecting unknown energy signatures, investigating. The ship was never seen again. More scout ships were sent. An exploration vessel vanished near the colonies. A research ship disappeared while investigating the mining stations in the asteroid belt. 3 military scouts went silent while approaching Mars. None of the ships sent distress signals. They simply stopped existing. When the Council sent automated probes to find the missing vessels, the probes returned with recordings of empty space. No wreckage, no energy signatures, no trace that the ships had ever been there. After 6 weeks of losing scouts, the Council became nervous. 12 species that had never known fear in 3,000 years began to worry about shadows and empty space. Then the real horror began. It started on Prime, where 20 billion of the galaxy's most advanced beings lived in crystal cities beneath purple skies. The first reports seemed minor. Older citizens were aging faster than normal, lived for 500 years and aged very slowly, but suddenly some were showing signs of rapid aging. Within days, the condition spread to younger. Century-old adults began showing the physical signs of extreme age. Their perfect gray skin wrinkled, and their bright yellow eyes grew dim. Medical centers filled with patients whose bodies were aging decades every day. But worse than the aging was the discovery that affected could not reproduce. The sterility was complete and instant. For a species that took centuries to reach maturity and had very few children, this was a death sentence that would work slowly but surely. The medical experts had never seen anything like it. The condition affected only and seemed designed specifically for their biology. It was as if someone had studied their genes for years and created the perfect weapon to destroy their species without killing them quickly. While Prime dealt with its crisis, similar disasters struck other Council worlds. On the ocean planet Major, the vast seas that had remained unchanged for millions of years suddenly began dying. Fish, seaweed, coral reefs, and even the microscopic organisms that formed the base of all life started to disappear. The poison was invisible and undetectable, but it killed only the native life forms that the people needed to survive. The who breathed water and lived their entire lives in the oceans watched helplessly as their world became a dead sea. Their gills could still filter oxygen from the water, but there was no food left for them to eat. Billions of aquatic beings faced slow starvation. The hive worlds experienced a different kind of horror. The insect-like beings shared a mental connection that let millions of individuals work together as one mind. Suddenly, that connection began to fail. Workers would start a task and then stand motionless, unable to remember what they were supposed to do. The breakdown spread through their colonies like a computer virus. Entire hive cities fell silent as their inhabitants lost the ability to coordinate with each other. They had never existed as individuals, and they did not know how to function when their shared consciousness was destroyed. Each of the 12 council species found themselves facing a unique disaster perfectly designed to attack their greatest strengths. The crystalline discovered that their mineral bodies were slowly dissolving from the inside. The gas-breathing found their atmosphere suits failing as something attacked the materials they were made from. The energy-based, who lived as pure consciousness in specially designed containers, watched in terror as their containment systems began to malfunction for no reason their best scientists could understand. But perhaps the most frightening thing was how precise each attack was. The diseases and poisons that devastated council species had no effect on other aliens. A could stand next to and only the would age rapidly. A could work alongside and only the would lose their hive-mind connection. This was not random biological warfare. This was targeted extinction designed by someone who understood each species better than they understood themselves. As reports came in from across council space, a pattern became clear. Every major council world was under attack. Every member species was facing their own specific nightmare, and all of it had begun exactly 3 months after the humans went silent. Called an emergency meeting of the council. For the first time in centuries, the great chamber was filled with fear instead of arrogance. Species that had ruled the galaxy were dying, and they had no idea how to fight an enemy they could not see. "The humans," whispered, the crystal whose body was already showing signs of the dissolution plague. "This started after we killed their envoy." "Impossible," replied, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "Humans are primitive. They lack the science to create such weapons." But as the council debated whether humans could be responsible for their suffering, another message arrived from the silent depths of space. This time it came from Admiral himself, transmitted from an unknown location to every council world simultaneously. The message was simple: "You killed our daughter. Now you know what it feels like to face extinction. But this is only the beginning. Protocol Omega has 12 phases, one for each council species. You have experienced Phase 1. Phase 1 stared at the transmission in horror. If you wish to see Phase 2, continue your current policies. If you wish to live, you will request a ceasefire within 72 hours. Choose wisely." The transmission ended, leaving the council alone with their dying worlds and the terrible realization that they had attacked something far more dangerous than they ever imagined. 68 hours after Admiral's message stood before what remained of the Galactic Council. 3 members had already died from the biological weapons targeting their species. 2 more were too sick to attend the meeting. The chamber that had once symbolized alien superiority now felt like a tomb. "We accept the human offer to negotiate," announced, his voice hollow with defeat. The proud leader had aged 50 years in the past month, his gray skin now wrinkled and his yellow eyes dim from the rapid aging disease. The response came within minutes. A new transmission filled the chamber's main screen, showing Admiral sitting in what appeared to be a military command center. Behind him, dozens of human officers worked at stations displaying star maps and tactical information. "Prime Minister," said calmly, "I appreciate your decision to choose conversation over continued suffering." The crystal whose body was slowly dissolving spoke with a voice like breaking glass. "Admiral, we underestimated your species, but surely you understand that total war benefits no one. Both our peoples will suffer if this continues." Leaned forward slightly. "Will they? Let me explain exactly what you're facing, and then you can decide if both sides are suffering equally." The display behind changed to show a detailed map of human space. Instead of empty, evacuated worlds, the map revealed hundreds of military installations, hidden shipyards, and defensive platforms that had never appeared on any council intelligence report. For the past 3 months, while you searched for desperate human refugees, you were actually looking at the largest military mobilization in galactic history, explained. Every human colony, space station, and settlement has been converted to support Protocol Omega. Our entire species is now dedicated to one mission: ensuring that no alien race will ever again consider humans expendable. The council members stared in shock as the display showed massive shipyards hidden inside asteroids, weapons platforms disguised as mining stations, and military bases built inside what appeared to be civilian colonies. "You evacuated your people?" asked its military advisor. "We evacuated no one," replied. "Every human civilian became a support worker for our military effort. Every scientist focused on creating better weapons. Every engineer worked on building ships and defenses. Every teacher began training the next generation for war. You weren't looking at empty space. You were looking at a military machine disguised as empty space." Sarah appeared on screen beside. Her face was cold and determined, showing no sign of the grief she felt for her murdered wife. While the Council saw 30 years of peaceful cooperation, humanity was conducting the largest intelligence-gathering operation in galactic history. The display changed again to show detailed files on each council species. Genetic information, psychological profiles, technological weaknesses, cultural pressure points, and military capabilities were laid out in devastating detail. Every human who worked with council species was also a spy, Sarah continued. Every trade negotiation collected economic data. Every scientific exchange gathered biological information. Every human soldier serving in council armies reported on military tactics and equipment. The delegate, speaking through a translator since her aquatic body was trapped in a failing tank of dying water, asked, "How did you hide such massive intelligence operations from our security services?" Smiled grimly. "Because you thought you were the smart ones and we were the primitive servants. Your security looked for threats from equals, not from the hired help. A human janitor cleaning council offices had access to the same areas as human diplomats. A human mechanic fixing council ships could install hidden recording devices. You never thought to watch your servants because you never considered them capable of complex planning." The horror of their situation began to sink in for the council members. They had not been employing useful barbarians. They had been hosting enemy agents for 3 decades. "The biological weapons," said weakly. "How did you create diseases so specifically targeted to each of our species?" "Dr. Sarah will explain," replied. Sarah's voice was steady and scientific, but her words chilled the council members to their bones. Every council species welcomed human medical researchers to study alien biology. You thought we were trying to learn how to treat humans who worked alongside aliens. Actually, we were mapping your genetic weaknesses. Every time a council member got sick and human doctors helped with treatment, we learned more about your biology. Every time human medics worked on alien soldiers during council wars, we gathered more data. For 30 years, the galaxy's best biological minds worked together to understand exactly how each alien species could be destroyed. The representative, struggling to speak without the hive-mind connection that had defined their existence, managed to ask, "Why? Why tell us this? Why reveal your capabilities?" Stood up from his chair. Behind him, the display showed Earth surrounded by massive defensive platforms and fleets of ships that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. "Because Protocol Omega isn't about conquest," said. "It's about making sure no species ever again mistakes human diplomacy for human weakness. You killed because you thought humans would accept it. You thought we were too weak or too divided to respond effectively." "You were wrong on all counts," Sarah added. "Humans are stronger when we work together than any alien species has ever been alone. We are more patient than you thought, more intelligent than you believed, and far more dangerous than you imagined." Activated another display showing star maps with human ships positioned throughout the galaxy. Phase 1 of Protocol Omega was biological warfare targeting specific species. Phase 2 involves our hidden fleet destroying every Council military base and shipyard simultaneously. The Council members looked at the display in horror. Human ships were positioned near every major Council installation, apparently having been there for months without being detected. Phase 3 targets Council civilian infrastructure, power plants, communications networks, transportation hubs. Your civilizations would be reduced to individual planets with no way to coordinate or support each other. Pause to let this information sink in. I could continue describing the remaining 9 phases, but I think you understand the situation. Protocol Omega assumes humanity is facing extinction and responds with overwhelming force to eliminate any species that poses a threat to human survival. His voice was barely a whisper. What do you want from us?" "Very simple terms," replied. "First, formal apology for the murder of Ambassador and recognition that it was an act of war. Second, the dissolution of the Hegemony Council and its replacement with a galactic assembly where all species have equal representation. Third, binding agreements that protect all species from military aggression by others. "You want us to give up 3,000 years of galactic leadership?" asked the delegate. "You gave that up when you chose murder over diplomacy," Sarah answered. "Now you can choose between sharing power with others or losing all power permanently." Look directly at each council member. Humanity spent 30 years learning everything about your species. We know your strengths, your weaknesses, your fears, and your needs. We could destroy you completely, but we would prefer to live alongside you as equals. Believed that different species could work together to build something better than any one race could achieve alone. Her death doesn't change that belief. It just means we won't allow any species to dominate others through force. The Admiral paused before delivering his final message. "You have 72 hours to accept these terms. If you refuse, or if you attempt to attack human positions, Protocol Omega continues to its conclusion. I promise you do not want to see what the remaining phases contain." The transmission ended, leaving the Council alone with their dying worlds and an impossible choice. They could accept the end of their empire and try to build something new with humanity as equals, or they could face complete destruction by an enemy they had created through their own arrogance. For the first time in 3,000 years, the rulers of the galaxy realized they were no longer in control of their own destiny. 6 months after died in the council chambers, the galaxy was a completely different place. The biological weapons had stopped as quickly as they had begun. Human medical teams arrived at council worlds with treatments that reversed the aging disease, cleaned the poisoned oceans, and restored the broken hive-mind connections. The cures worked perfectly, proving that humanity had always possessed the ability to heal what they had chosen to destroy. But the scars remained. Every council species now knew how it felt to face extinction, and they knew that humans could deliver that fate whenever they chose. The great ship Harmony still floated among the stars, but it no longer served as the center of a galactic empire. The Hegemony Council had dissolved itself, replaced by something unprecedented in galactic history, a government where different species truly held equal power. The first meeting of the new Galactic Assembly took place in the same chamber where had died. The high chairs that had once made council members look down on others were replaced with a circular arrangement where every species sat at the same level. 12 alien races and humanity shared power that had once belonged to aliens alone. At the center of the chamber stood a memorial too. Her image was carved in crystal, showing her as she had been in life, determined, hopeful, and unafraid. Below her picture were written her last words to the council: "Friendship must be between equals, not masters and servants." Had been named the Assembly's first Secretary General, a position she would hold forever in honor and memory. No living being would ever hold that title. It belonged to the woman who had died trying to build bridges between species, and whose death had instead built something entirely new. Admiral stood before the memorial in his retirement clothes, simple civilian garments instead of military uniform. At 68 years old, he looked tired but peaceful. The weight of commanding humanity's war effort had aged him, but the success of Protocol Omega had given him something he had not expected: the chance to mourn his daughter in a galaxy that would remember her name. "She would have liked this," he said to Dr. Sarah, who stood beside him holding a small bouquet of earth flowers. "Always believed different species could work together if they respected each other." Sarah placed the flowers at the base of the memorial. She was right. It just took showing the galaxy what disrespect would cost them. Behind them, the Assembly conducted its daily business. Alien delegates who had once seen humans as useful animals now treated human representatives with careful respect and barely hidden fear. Everyone in the galaxy knew that humanity had demonstrated the ability to destroy any species that threatened them, but no one knew the full extent of what Protocol Omega contained. The biological weapons had been only Phase 1. The hidden fleets were Phase 2. What were the other 10 phases? Human military leaders refused to discuss it, maintaining that Protocol Omega remained classified for security reasons. This uncertainty became its own form of deterrence. Every species knew that attacking humanity would trigger responses they could not predict or prepare for. Sarah had accepted the position of Chief Scientific Advisor to the Assembly. Her job was to oversee research projects that benefited all species, and to ensure that biological weapons like those used against the Council could never be created again. But everyone who worked with her knew that the woman who had designed weapons to target alien genetics now controlled all research into alien biology. The irony was not lost on anyone. In her laboratory, Sarah continued her work on beneficial applications of biology. She developed medical treatments that worked across species lines and agricultural techniques that could feed both human and alien populations. But in a secured vault that only she could access, samples and data from Protocol Omega remained stored and ready. The galaxy had learned that Dr. Sarah was far more dangerous as a friend than any previous enemy had been. Her scientific knowledge could heal or destroy entire species, and her personal loss made her loyalty to humanity absolute. Had retired to a small farming colony at the edge of human space, where he grew vegetables in the rich soil and taught local children about Earth's history. His retirement was well publicized throughout the galaxy, a reminder that the architect of Protocol Omega was always watching from the peaceful countryside, ready to return to war if humanity was threatened again. The former Harmony was renamed the Unity, and now served as the Assembly's mobile capital. It traveled between different species' home systems, spending time in each region to ensure that all voices could be heard in galactic government. The ship that had once been a symbol of alien dominance became a symbol of cooperation achieved through strength. The Assembly's first major decision was to establish the Memorial Accords, a set of laws protecting diplomats and envoys from all species. The murder of a diplomatic representative was now considered an act of war against all Assembly members, punishable by immediate military response from the combined fleets of every species. No one would ever again die as had died. Trade between species flourished under the new system. Humans were no longer cheap labor and expendable soldiers, but full partners in galactic commerce and exploration. Human colonies expanded into new systems with Assembly protection and support. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers on projects that benefited everyone. But the galaxy also knew that humanity was fundamentally different from other species. While aliens had needed thousands of years to develop their civilizations and technologies, humans had gone from primitive planet-bound creatures to galactic powers in less than a century. Their adaptation speed was unprecedented, and their unity when threatened was absolute. Every species remembered the 3 months when human space had gone silent, and then emerged as a military force capable of destroying civilizations. The lesson was clear. Humans could be the galaxy's best friends or its worst nightmare, and the choice belonged entirely to how others treated them. New ambassadors from human worlds arrived at alien capitals with the same diplomatic credentials had carried, but now they were received with the honors due to representatives of a major power. Alien leaders who had once dismissed human concerns now listened carefully to human proposals and requests. The first human ambassador to visit the rebuilt was a young woman named Maria Santos. As she walked through the crystal corridors where had once traveled, guards bowed respectfully, and government officials waited to greet her with formal ceremony. In the audience chamber where had died, Maria sat in a chair that was now positioned at the same level as the leadership. The device that had once been used to murder a human diplomat was gone, destroyed in shame, and replaced with a garden of flowers from 12 different worlds. Ambassador Santos, Prime Minister said, his voice carefully respectful. Humanity honors us with your presence. How may the people serve the Assembly today? Maria smiled and opened her briefcase, just as had done months before. But now the proposals inside would be treated as equal negotiations between sovereign powers, not requests from servants to masters. I bring greetings from Earth and proposals for new scientific cooperation between our species, Maria said. Humanity believes that working together, we can build something better than any of us could achieve alone. The words were spoken by a new voice in a transformed galaxy. The Council had killed a human envoy to prove their superiority, but instead they had unleashed something that changed the balance of power forever. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy not through inherited authority or ancient conquest, but through demonstrated capability and unshakable resolve. They had proven that human diplomacy was backed by human strength, and that strength was far greater than anyone had imagined. The galaxy would never again mistake human friendship for human weakness.